Hi, my name is Ali Raskin. I am super excited to do this call on hormones today. I'm learning things all the time, which is why I'm super excited and grateful to introduce Dr. Cindy Haggerton, who is a chiropractor by training, a doctor of chiropractics, and also a midwife. Although she was not trained classically, she was not trained classically with holistic medicine. This was something she thought she'd never be doing, this woo-woo juju natural stuff, and it worked. So she has lots of stories to tell, and she's a mother of 6 children, ranging from almost 1 to I think 13 is her oldest. And so she gets all the hormones going on here, as well as being a mom, a nursing mom. And so she has lots of hormone experience. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Cindy.
Hey. Okay. Does it pop on your screen now too when it's like recording? Do you want to stay in? And I'm like, yes, continue. So hopefully we don't lose anybody with the weird memo that now our phones have updated with. And just in time for us to get used to them, they'll change something else. That's okay. We will roll with it. So hi, I'm glad that I get you guys in the middle of the day. Hopefully you're not feeling the need for nap time, depending on where you're at. But if you're there, my probably fast talking will wake you up. If not, grab you some Ninja or some Nitro, Zing. Hopefully you found some in stock. We won't admit maybe our live event had something to do with all that being out of stock, but hopefully it'll come back. But we have tools if you're having a hard time listening or staying awake. And so you probably caught me because of the stage that I find myself in right now, rolling on my EndoFlex, which is going to make me talk extra fast. But we do have a lot to cover with you guys. Hopefully from Ali's intro, you grasp, and maybe you've been on a few of these talks. If you haven't, or if you're feeling this, let me just put your mind at ease that you can take a deep breath wherever this journey finds you, whatever experience you're having or not having, prejudgments that you've made. I have been there. And so that's why Jim Bob and I have a running joke that guaranteed the things that we say, which we try to not anymore say, I will never do that, have ended up being exactly where we're at. And so all these crazy things that I stereotyped people as, I now find myself either in that moment or having had that experience. And so know that there is no judgment on this. We all start out somewhere on this journey. And the whole point of these classes is that we have found an answer to something that we were looking for and find ourselves somewhere along the line. And we want to bring you along to be further tomorrow than where you are today. So know that as we know better, we can do better. And we've all made things and decisions that we wish we could go back and tweak a little bit. And so the beauty of that is that if you find yourself in a point in your life that you can't do that for yourself, guess what? You have people in your circle. A lot of times that's family, close friends, who can benefit from this wisdom. So this is a really broad subject. Asking us to teach on hormones is like, hey, teach me about life, because guess what? Your hormones are involved in every aspect of your life, no matter what stage you're in and what you are not doing. And so when we have something that's really broad and that tends to overwhelm, I want to cover some basic things for you guys that if you implement even just one thing today, whether that's taking something out that you've been actively doing or adding something in, or maybe a little bit of both, you will be better than had you not done that. And so no, when we were asking in the chat, yes, it helps me to gather where you're at, whether you're nursing like me, still cycling like Ali, and menopause like Tina. If that's not you, you have somebody in your circle who is. But this information that we cover today is going to be the basics of that. And then we will delve more into deeper things and we can answer your questions. But I want you to know, and as we were preparing for this talk, and you guys, kudos to the women who get on here and sometimes men and teach you these things, because I can tell you a lot of preparation goes on behind the scenes, because we have been blessed by information that others have poured in through this community to us. And so we want to do that for y'all. But know that we don't just haphazardly get on these calls. And so there is a lot of prep. And so as we were discussing, and all of us are not only in different stages in life, but we have different experiences that we bring to the table and that we've tried out with this. And so as we were chatting through things that we're passionate about and want to cover on this, we all agreed, and I'll speak for the Western area. So if you're not in the States, you can tell us if this is how it is where you are. I do find that it's pretty much across the board, no matter where you live. So many times we want to hand over our power and our health to other people, and we want a solution to symptoms, because when the body throws out things, and sometimes it starts as a small whisper and then it gets a little bit louder, and depending on how we do or don't give it some love with what it's talking about, oftentimes it will scream at us. But we have grown so accustomed to things being easy that depending on how that symptom manifests itself and shows us like, hey, I'm not getting a little, love over here that I need, oftentimes we want to silence that. And so down the line, depending on how long that chat has been going on and not been addressed, things can get louder and louder. And so not only do we want to hand those over, but so often we want to jump in and do what in Western allopathic medicine does, like, hey, what's the prescription for that? And so if we're out of that whole prescription world where I don't necessarily want to pop a pill for it, then we get into the oil world. And I find this a lot in the birth lifestyle that I was in with birth workers, and we're like, okay, we're not going to take the epidural because we want the natural birth, but then what can I naturally do to take away those symptoms that the body has there on purpose because physiology is made to function a certain way? And so before we get into taking things because I want my progesterone to be at a certain level, or I want my estrogen to do this, or I don't want my cycles to do this, or this part of menopause isn't enjoyable, I want to go back to what are the foundational things that we have to have in place, and are we doing those basic foundational things, even though those might not snap and take away the symptom that we're looking to take care of? We're not going to get where we want to go and take care of the anatomy and the physiology if we're not doing the basic things that the body is created to have or created not to have. And so there is always a concept, whether we're talking about hormones or digestion or brain chemistry, it applies across the body, that with our organs, with our muscles, with our skin, whatever it is that we're talking about in the body, if we don't use something that is meant to be utilized, we will lose it. If we abuse something that is not meant to have the things that we're constantly giving it, we will lose it. And so in school, we would say, if you don't use it, or if you abuse it, you will lose it. And so in saying that towards talking about hormones, we want to take care and do the foundational things, because I could give you an oil that will act akin to things that will help our progesterone or our estrogen levels, but that doesn't do me any good if I'm not taking things in my nutrition or in my sleep or in my exercise that are meant to be the very building blocks of those hormones. Because the last thing I want to do, even though I have a holistic solution for that that's going to work with my body and not against it, is give you a bottle that for the rest of your life you have to be attached to. And oh my goodness, if I don't have this bottle, then my whole system goes haywire, because that in and of itself is just a little bit better than a prescription. And that's not what we're seeking out for the body. We're seeking to support it, give it the things that it needs, not give it the things that it doesn't need, so that it can function long term. And guess what? If we do those basic foundational things and we do find ourselves with a horrible period situation or symptoms in menopause that we're not enjoying, or we're on some massive medication to treat something, we will not go wrong supporting the body with foundational things. And we're not going to worry about messing things up if we don't have labs or we're not under the care of a practitioner. So if you find yourself like, oh my goodness, I don't have labs, or I don't know what to do, guess what? You were given your body. If you are a parent, you are given your children, because you are the perfect person to take care of that. You don't need a friend to have a book, although yes, sometimes that helps. You don't need a provider to come in with lab work or to write your prescription or to tell you what your symptoms are doing. You have everything that you need in your body. It's just that sometimes we need to not give it the stressors that we're putting on it, or we need to supply it with something that it needs in order to function that we're not doing. And so our goal for you is to get to better know your body, so that as those little whispers and symptoms come up, or as you're at certain times in the month, or maybe you're out of that cycling thing and you're around perimenopause, so around the menopause time, or maybe you're smack dab in the menopause era, or you're out of that, as things come up, you will know why those are doing that. And so if you're one who wants the education right now, it is in no other time period like I have seen available to you. Where we used to have to take a paper chart and temperatures, you can do that now, but now there are apps, now there are bracelets where you don't even have to do that. And so you can know what your hormones are doing, whether or not you have the lab work, just by paying attention, listening to those signs and symptoms from your body. So to take the overwhelm out of it, wherever you find yourself at, if you have not grabbed your premium starter kit, maybe you got started with Young Living another way, those 12 oils in that kit in and of themselves are a fantastic way, no matter what you find yourself on, what gender, whether we're talking male or female, where we're at or where you're at in cycles. I love grabbing that premium starter kit, and then I would add 2 oils in addition to the 12 that already come on to there, being cedarwood and orange. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. They will give you some samples of your Ningxia packet. I think Ningxia is a fantastic foundational supplement, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. But cedarwood does so much for your brain, and there's another oil that's already in those 12, frankincense. And so those 2 right there are powerhouses when we're talking about foundational things. And then I can go through a whole nother gamut of those 12 oils. And then orange is going to help us with something that we find is so abused, and right now more so than ever, which is our liver. And the reason why we want to care for that digestive system, especially our liver in particular, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of people in my life that complain about gallbladder. Sometimes those complaints get so much to where they have it taken out. And if that's you, all the love and grace in the world. And so no judgment there, but also, because we're talking about hormones, we'll talk about hysterectomies. You guys, we are not born with organs that don't serve a purpose. And we're not born with organs that get to a certain age and then, oh, they've served their time. It's time to cut them out and do away with them. We do that because we live in a broken world with a broken system that teaches us how to abuse stuff and not love on it. And so, yes, over time, if we stress something out enough, it's going to get to a point where it can't no longer function like it is meant to, because it's getting something that it's not supposed to have, or it's not getting the care that it needs. And so, yes, if you find yourself in that place where it's too far gone to bring things back, then we do have things to supplement that, but the body is not going to work in a perfect situation that it was meant to work in if some of those things are missing. And so know that we are working with the best that we have on hand with what is given to us at that point. But that orange, we cannot stress enough, because that liver and gallbladder basically function as one organ. We are in dire straits, cannot take out the liver. And so because we can still function by taking out the gallbladder, albeit, with symptoms once that happens, so often we take out that gallbladder and then we don't love on the liver. And that was the original issue to begin with, because those were one organ. And so we'll talk about what we want you to do with that orange, but that's why I would add on the orange and the cedarwood. When we're talking about basic building blocks, we need hydration. Both not only to put in what is needed with that, but also to flush things out, because when we're moving toxins out, that's going to help our hormonal system. And so when we're hydrating, I want to encourage you, and this is part of why Ningxia, that red juice that we love so much, is so powerful. It has other oils in it that will also help with this, but when you're hydrating with water, add a citrus oil into that. And yes, I do this with my kids. It's not something that is too powerful. If your organs are under stress, it's actually going to help with that. I love that we get double bang of our budget out of our products, and that we can not only help with the detox system, but then that's going to help with our immune system and our hormones with all of this. And so anytime that you're drinking water and hydrating, go ahead and put your citrus oil of choice in there. It'll encourage you to hydrate too, but it'll also give you a low level detox that you can handle. The other thing that I want you to do with your oils, besides diffusing things, Valor is fantastic to diffuse and then use topically, because it's going to help our nervous system to open up and better receive these things. But when I told you to add on cedarwood, fantastic in the diffuser, especially at night. Did you know, and anytime we get reductionistic about things where I'm like, hey, I want to talk about an organ in specific, or a symptom like breast cancer, for instance, anytime we get really reductionistic, I want to remind you that our body functions as a whole unit. And so if you read something or you're told something about a particular symptom, like I'm about to mention with breast cancer, know that we can do that from like a reverse. I call it in parenting, I want to reverse parent. And so how do I want my adult children to end up? And then what are action steps, even at 1, to 13, where I find myself right now, that I can take on the day-to-day to end up at that endpoint. And so when I'm talking about breast cancer, I don't want the cancer, I want healthy breast. And beyond healthy breast, how do we do the reverse health thing and achieve that goal? Well, we love on that reproductive system on hormones while you're on this class, right? And so you can look it up. Melatonin and breast cancer. And what they have been finding is that light in the middle of the night while we sleep, or decreased melatonin, which the light does that, has an influence on breast cancer. And they have found that people with low melatonin levels are at a higher risk for breast cancer. So what does that tell me? Sleep is really important. Having proper sleep conditions. What supplements do we have that help with melatonin? Again, I don't want to just take melatonin all the time, because that's a form of abuse to my body, where my organs that are supposed to produce that are going to be like, hey, she's giving it to me, this is easy. Now with the plants, we're coming along just like with good food and supporting our bodies so that they produce it, so I don't have to worry about, like, if I was taking an herbal or a prescription, about my body getting lazy. And there are times where, like, hey, we are like in crisis mode right now where I need to give you something. Yes, I would rather have an herb than a prescription at that point, or maybe I choose to take a prescription for a short window of time until I can support that organ, get it where it needs to be. But what that research is telling me, and what I want to reverse work on that for good health, that you guys know without me even saying, we are in this country, and probably in your country if you're not in my same country, deficient in sleep. We are way too overstressed. And so before I get into what are my levels doing, how can I support that sleep? Even if I'm getting the proper hours, am I getting good depth there and waking up in a healthy mode during the day? Am I dreaming well? All of those things, I can stick cedarwood in my diffuser and help with that. Frankincense, we can take it, and because of where these hormones are produced and the chemistry that we're wanting to happen neurologically in our brain, we can get in the practice of putting frankincense on our thumb. It's a vitality oil, and so you can stick it under your tongue if you want to. But what I do, put it on my thumb and then apply it to the roof of my mouth and just do a few good deep breaths. That frankincense is going to go in and do so much neurologically that's going to help wake up that hormonal system that so oftentimes is under stress. And so if you just took from your starter kit that frankincense and then added on the cedarwood and started working on your brain health and your sleep, you will be eons further along on this journey than where you started before you came on this call. Digest is another oil in that starter kit. Why do we harp on our digestive system? Your digestive system is basically your second brain. I really look at them as one and the same. And as we age, especially, but under the stress that all of us hopefully just came out of, and you're not, sitting in comfortably after 2020, but there has been a lot of stress. That stress works against our digestive system. Well, guess what? All of your neurochemistry and the things that are produced in your head, which have to do with your hormones, how well your hormones are getting produced and then filtering through and able to go to where they need to in your body, all of that is only going to be as good as your digestive system is. And so how do we, without overwhelming you when you're like, how do we start on this? We're drinking, we're adding our water, we're starting on slow detox, and then we're working on that digestive system simply by applying our Digest. Get consistent with that Digest on your belly once a day, and then move to 2 or 3 times a day, depending on where we're at with that digestive system. It will do wonders for you just to get that digestive system functioning and rolling good in that situation. Okay, where are our hormones and why are we so passionate about, again, wherever you're at on the spectrum, on cleaning out things and making that switch? You guys have probably heard us before. Don't get overwhelmed, and like husbands really don't like this when you come in and you're like, I'm going to take away all of the things because I was on this class and I just found out that this is toxic. Teenage sons and daughters, same thing. Like, start either one person or one room or one part of your day at a time and make that swap. The reason why we are so passionate about cleaning things out is because most things in your environment, you can control some of it and you can't others. And so we're going to control as much as we can, which is why I love that we have the responsibility of being the gatekeepers in our home of what we're keeping out and what we're allowing in. But simple things that you just thought were creating a really pretty ambiance, like lighting a candle or putting your favorite dryer sheet in, or spraying or cleaning with who knows what, doing the yard outside, going and having things done to your nails and your hair. If it is a synthetic chemical, and so much that we can put all under the umbrella of, say, like fragrances or whatever, most of the time those chemicals are really stimulating the estrogen in our system. And so they don't work like the same estrogen in our body. That's why you'll hear them referred to as xenoestrogens, because they're not the exact same thing. But the body gets really confused because it seems like estrogen, even though it's not quite estrogen. And the issue with that is that, again, whether you're cycling or not, this is something I'm really passionate about for our kids. All of us need, and men do this too, although testosterone comes in a little bit more into play with men, whereas with women, it's a little bit, we still all need it. When that estrogen comes on the scene, whether it's from our own body or from those outside sources stimulating us on the inside, and it gets really, really high, it tells progesterone and testosterone, hey, we don't need you because this one's really, really high. And so you really need to get low, low, low. And so we can have all sorts of issues that many of you have probably complained of or heard complained of with symptoms of that testosterone or that progesterone low. And it is the reason why most people, if they're going to deviate towards one area or the other, we tend to see more low progesterone than we do low estrogen because it's so high in our environment. And so not even giving you specifically where your hormone levels are at or what you can do, you could be on this call and be like, I'm going to switch out my cleaners in my home to the Thieves line and just start utilizing Thieves household cleaner, and you would be eons ahead because you've taken such a stressor off of your system and allowed that estrogen to breathe. Now, if you don't have labs and you want to know specifically where those levels are at, you could, and you can just Google this because you guys can read, and I don't need to keep you on a call to tell you this. But again, like I said, there's apps, there's thermometers that'll communicate directly to your apps. There's bracelets that you can wear, but start tracking temperature. Even without cycling, that temperature will give you an idea of what your thyroid is doing and whether we need some love on those thyroid and adrenals. Spoiler alert, most people do, because most of us live under such high stress that we need some extra massage on that area. There's a great book if you are cycling or if you have children that you're raising up and you want them to have healthier hormone systems than you did, called Taking Control of Your Fertility. So somebody can put that in the chat. Don't let the fact that it's thick seem really daunting to you, because you can get into specific areas on there and it's really, really helpful. For our perimenopause, and you guys don't put an age number on this because I have had women come in who are wanting to start a family and they go and get lab work done and their doctors are like, I have really bad news for you, you're going into menopause, and they're young. I have also seen them reverse that by, again, loving on these systems just like we're teaching you to do. But it is so rare, although unfortunately becoming more common. We used to only here in the United States, people complaining about going into the cycling season or into menopause, and all these symptoms that would throw out were more found in the US when I was traveling to other places in the world, because they hadn't lived under the stress that we did here, and because there wasn't this mentality of seeing it as something that should be like dreaded instead of a life stage that we're blessed to walk into. But with those symptoms, let's take menopause, for instance, with hot flashes and things like that. When we love on the endocrine system, because that's most of the time where the stress is coming from, when we see someone, and labs can back this up if they have them drawn, who has exhausted and deficient adrenals, and it will always, with stress in the hormones, start out in the adrenals, and that is meant to be a short-term stressor, that we get those adrenal glands going and then they send out cortisol to be like, hey, this is not the way it's meant to be. I feel like I'm constantly, running from this dangerous situation. And then at a certain point, exactly, fight or flight, like Tina's typing in there, at a certain point, those adrenals are like, okay, I have been yelling enough and you're not listening to me, and that stressor is still there. And so then what do? They pull in the thyroid. So are you like having an aha moment right now as to why everyone around you seems to need some sort of something for their thyroid? It's because we're living in this constant stressor, not only while we're awake, but then we're not getting good sleep. So we never get to that repair point. And so then what happens after all these years, all of a sudden we start getting close to that perimenopause time, and these hot flashes start coming up. Maybe it's vaginal dryness. For the men, we're going to see low testosterone. Why do you think in our area they're abundant? Probably in your area, no matter where you're at, you're starting to see these, or it's advertised. Low T centers. It's a lot easier, again, to patch something initially on that system and be like, hey, they had testosterone, than it is to go and look at that root cause. But I'm telling you, the root cause is usually an endocrine system that needs some massive love because it doesn't have it over the years. So loving on that digestive system and then working on that endocrine system with sleep. Our other little oil that we can add on if you don't do it initially with that orange and that cedarwood, Endoflex. This one is phenomenal. It's also a vitality oil. In a little bit, Allie's going to give you some great information on how you can test some things at home beyond temperature. But I will tell you, I like to start off with things topically. I like to even smell them before I do that, just to wake up my brain and say, hey, this is what we're about to give you, body. But as we do that, once we move from topical, even on your ones that aren't vitality, you can do you in your home. I know this is being recorded, so don't come back at me. Just try it, even though sometimes we do things off label, right? And so you know your body best. If you don't have peace, don't do it. But this one is vitality, so I'm safe when I say this one. After you've done it topical for a little while, put it sublingually. Any area that we have vascularity, especially when we're needing it quickly and we need more of it in our system, and if that's you, that I'm talking to the people who have gone years with this and who are having the symptoms, it may not be enough for you to do it topical. It certainly won't be enough, although you may notice, an immediate difference. It just won't stick for you to do it several times topically. And so that's when we move to the sublingual. I love this trick when we're talking progesterone for Progessence Plus. You can get so much more out of doing it under your tongue. No, it doesn't taste great. I like it straight under the tongue better than in a capsule, because I'm just removing more and more barriers from that getting to a really vascular area. And so what's going to happen when I put it in an area with a lot of blood flow, same concept if we choose to do like a vaginal suppository or a rectal one, you've got a lot of vascularity in those areas. And so if we're needing something to work really quick and for those effects to stay longer, going orally, you're going to get better results with that, or to a vascular area, however you choose to do that. And so if you know, hey, I'm having those symptoms of being told that I'm somewhere in that menopause, or these periods aren't coming consistently, I can't, make them like clockwork, I'm getting awful clotting with them, I'm getting cramps, acne, all those things that are our body throwing signs that, hey, something is not getting the love that it needs. Start loving on that endocrine system, and you cannot go wrong on that. Besides our oils, a little unsung hero on doing our basics. Master Formula is a great just blanket one. I think we'll have some conversation on that in a little bit, but some people choose not to do that. Before you start with Master Formula, make sure that you're consistent with your Ningxia. I love Ningxia when we're talking about hormones, because it does have the citrus oils in there to love on your liver. It also is fantastic at regulating blood sugar, because again, we're just giving basic nutrition. And it's just enjoyable to do a drink that tastes good, rather than trying to convince you to swallow some pills. So let's get our body getting some good results and some wins before we try to ask things of it that aren't maybe as enjoyable and require a little bit more commitment from you. But get great at that Ningxia. And then secondary to Ningxia, unsung hero, because so many of you guys read it and you're like, it's for the athletes, I don't need that, is our AminoWise. AminoWise has amino acids in it, and your proteins have your amino acids. That's why you'll hear it talked about in our diet. But those amino acids are so important as building blocks, and they can also help to balance and build that microbiome, which is the good. There's not really such a thing as bad. We just need a balance. But the bacteria that we need in that digestive system to not only help us digest things, and to help build up those hormones that we may be deficient in, or maybe never built in the first place. And AminoWise is enjoyable. It tastes great. If you're working out, all the more reason, but it is so good. I even give it to my kids, and it's fantastic with that neurology. If you have come into Young Living and you have not tried our enzymes, I would challenge you and give you the suggestion to try them. Even if you've been consistent with enzymes, but they've been with another brand, you will find that our supplements, say like our vitamin C, you might try it and compare it to something else that you were taking. You're like, wow, I don't understand, why with the same numbers and similar ingredients am I feeling this way with the Young Living one versus others. It is because when we put oils into them, and just with how Gary developed them, it takes it up to the next level. And so with enzymes, we have a lot. So you may know your specific needs with digestion, and you may not. If you're new to this and you haven't tried them, I would suggest you start with our Essential Zyme 4. They come in a packet. They're super easy to do. do. That number 4, if you're like, what's the number stand for? If you like to nerd out on knowledge, you may be familiar with macronutrients, but you're like, there's not 4. We talk about macros, we talk about our carbs and our proteins and our fats. Well, Gary actually added in a 4th, which was fiber. And so that's what the 4 stands for. That 4 and those macronutrients is meant to be taken with your meals. And so right before you eat them, it's a good thing just to keep them like on your table or carry them in your purse if you're out if you're out, and you can take them with whatever you're eating, and that is going to help you absorb your nutrition. Maybe there's things that are there that have been there a while that need to be broken down. And so it does mean no good if I fix you this really nutritious meal, but you are weak on those enzymes for whatever reason, and you're not going to pull the nutrients out of that meal. And so when we're talking about building blocks, most of us are deficient in enzymes. If you're on this call, it's pretty safe to say that you're deficient in enzymes, because if you're at the age that wants to get on in the middle of your lunch hour or wherever you find yourself to talk about hormones, you probably need enzymes. After you've tried our Essential Zymes 4, try just the plain Essential Zymes, but you want to take those when you don't have food on your stomach. So in between meals or when you first wake up in the morning, give it plenty of time that's split away from food. I'd say about at least 30 minutes. And that way, those Essential Zymes that don't have the 4 on them are meant to digest things that are already in your body that need cleaning out. And so I kind of think of those in my mind as a detox, but they're phenomenal. And the way that Gary developed those and the clinics that he used them in, again, if we want to talk about that reverse action today on where we want to land our health, you could just change enzymes and be so much further along on this hormone journey. And you'll be amazed at what you see once you've given your body a little while on these enzymes. And we're going to talk a lot more next month about detox because that is so, so important. And then orange oil, you can absolutely do this under your tongue and your water like I was talking about, but with your liver, I would add this topically. If you're on the call, you probably saw me doing this because anytime I pass my orange bottle, I do this. I don't think that we can do it enough. Put it on your hand, and then in the front of your body where your rib cage is at, on that right hand side, your right, not my right, apply it topically right where those ribs end, and that is right over your liver. You can do this with our other oils like GLF, Juvaflex, all of those, but orange is just a basic great way to do that. If you want to love on your liver a little bit more, put it in your water or do it in capsules, but we literally cannot do that enough. It is so easy when we chat about this stuff to only think about the physical and specifically these organs, but I will tell you guys, the reason why I think we see, I know I don't think, these issues with the liver in particular, and why we will continue to see more things with the hormones, is that we have so much emotionally that is taxing on us as a world right now. And I know if you're sitting here like, whoa, she's getting into the woo-woo stuff, I was there. Don't wait to be taken to a stressor in your life where you have to acknowledge this stuff, because I get it that it can be odd for some people, but just start trying to love on those emotions a little bit too, and you'll be amazed at how things change for you physically. And so when we look at, I love an app that's called, it's from the book Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. I think in your app store, you can just look at Feelings Buried. It's like $6 for the app. It is worth its weight, especially if you're going to like read it for your spouse. It's a lot funnier reading their symptoms and what the emotions are tied to on them than it is on you. And so just a warning on that. Some things like to have wisdom on just read it and don't go sharing it with them right away. But I literally, it is so fascinating to me. Every time a physical something comes up, I pull it up in that app to see what the correlation is. All the app does is just tell you like, hey, if I look at liver, where this is at, because we talked about gallbladder, you guys go look up gallbladder. If we're talking about hormones, look up uterus on there, ovaries. I don't remember if it says testosterone, but you can just search around on words or just flip through it. And it is so fascinating how you will feel like this thing is reading your mail. It's not, it's just that there is science to the correlation between these physical things and what we're seeing symptom wise. But how awesome that we don't just have to read this and like giggle about it and then cry like people often do as we're sitting there and like, oh my word, I've been dealing with this thing physically for so long and didn't feel like, because we so often suppress those emotions that it had anything to do with stuff that we were going through emotionally. We don't have to sit with that because we have tools like we're talking about. You can work on digestion, and then all of a sudden our thought life and our stressors start to change. We can work on these emotions of anger anger, which is what the liver is correlated to, with grief. Hello, I don't care where you're at. Did 2020 not do a number on all of us that we were angry at some things? We had to grieve some stuff. And then all of a sudden, if we just stress out that organ and we don't allow it to filter our hormones, how are we going to, as a body, get things out of there that we're done using or that weren't supposed to be there in the first place, and then help to produce the things that we need on a daily basis? And so dealing with those emotions is so, so powerful. And so grab that app, go through and read things that you know that you're having symptoms of, or that somebody that you care about is, and then you don't have to sit there with them and process through the whole thing. If you're reading something about anger in the liver, we can grab an orange oil and get great results from that. And so how powerful are these tools? And that's why we're so passionate about hopping on and sharing with you guys on that. So the app is called Feelings Buried Alive. I think is all you have to search. It's just a little purple heart, but it is so fascinating. So go avail yourself to that and utilize it. But I will pass it over to Tina now, because I know she has some information to further this. And then you guys, please, if you get the recording for this after, but tomorrow evening we'll have this call again. And then next month we will delve deeper into detox, because the digestive system really is the key to getting this system rolling. But just start with one of those changes that we mentioned here and implement that, and you will take yourself so much further on this hormone journey.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Cindy. That was incredible. And really the main thing that I want to help you guys understand is I was kind of that person that was living the typical American lifestyle. I was in, as an adolescent, I had terrible cycles. I would lose up to 10 pounds just in a couple of days from vomiting and diarrhea and cramps and all the things. Well, the answer back in the 80s for that was put you on birth control pills. And so that's what I did. At 17, I followed the doctor's instructions, and that was to go on birth control pills. I also dealt with a chronic situation within my sinuses. I was constantly having sinus infections and strep throat. I was a carrier. So I was on tons and tons of antibiotics. And so as a professional, I went into the salon industry. So I was surrounded by chemicals. I did nails for a living, and my mom was a hairstylist. So, you know, guess who was her guinea pig? I have had so many chemicals, so many prescriptions, so many artificial estrogens and hormones in my body that it's no wonder that in 2012, I had this big, scary diagnosis of an autoimmune disease. But I knew that because my sister and my brother both have struggled with addictions due to medical diagnosed prescriptions, I didn't want that. I recognized some of the names the doctor was giving me: something to sleep, something for my moods. I had been on Prozac, I had been on Xanax, I had been on all these pills. It just didn't make me feel right. So I really started just praying and asking God to show me ways to heal my body naturally. That was in 2012. And I had no idea how I was just walking through, being led, going through the doors that were opening, not going through the doors that were closing for me. But what I was really doing was exactly what Dr. Cindy was saying. I was healing the gut. I was healing the liver. I was working on the emotions. I was doing all the things. And guys, my body has completely reversed fibromyalgia. So when somebody comes to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, I heard you healed from fibromyalgia. What oil did you use?" I'm like, it's a whole lot of stuff. It's a whole lot of lifestyles. It's a baby steps into this lifestyle. So, you know, don't overwhelm yourself. Take yourself very slow and work on it a little bit at a time. So in my life as a mom, I have two children, two daughters that are 20 and 23. And I'm so jealous of them because neither one of them have ever had a cramp from a cycle. They've never had a really rough cycle. They're very on time and scheduled. And I'm like, how does that happen? It's because we've been raising them in a world of non-toxic foods and all the things. And I meant to tell you, when I was their age, I was being raised in a home with a single mom. And guess what? TV dinners and all the microwave things in the frozen food section, that was all the rage. You know, I think I lived on microwave fettuccine Alfredo as a teenager. That was just what I ate. So now that we eat real food and we don't eat the processed foods, my daughters have a completely different hormone story than I have. And so I know that this is going to help them. This education is going to help them not to have the problems that I had. So I want to just also iterate a couple of things that I have also used. I know Dr. Cindy talked about enzymes. I think those are absolutely important. read the essential oil desk reference. I use the 8th edition. You can use whatever edition you have. The later editions have the current products that we offer, but definitely follow the label instructions and work on the enzymes. I'm now a certified natural health professional, but as I was learning that food, the enzymes in our food, they completely die off at 120 degrees. Well, I don't know about you, but I cook most of my food. I know a raw food diet is great, but that's just not practical in most days. So you're losing your enzymes out of your food. Even if you're buying organic, non-GMO produce, you are losing the enzymes if you're cooking it and not eating it raw. So you have to supplement with these things. Make sure that you're getting your enzymes in every day. And of course, your essential fatty acids. One of the worst things that happened to the American, and I'm probably assuming that it's in other countries too, was that fat-free trend. That trend in a diet absolutely wrecked wrecked the bodies of people who are trying to maintain homeostasis, because we have to have the healthy fats. So I take Omega Gi's. So there's all kinds of things in addition. I know Dr. Cindy mentioned some things. And of course, if you know your levels and you're working on things and you know you need to work on natural hormone replacements, look into the essential oil desk reference, because we have things like Cortistop and PD8020 and pregnenolone cream and Progessence Plus and Power Gi's and so many products that are made for this particular system. But again, when you work on those root causes, you don't need those other things. I do not even use, I'm 53 years old. I haven't had a cycle since February of 2020. So I consider myself postmenopausal. And I do not use consistently any of the things. I work on my gut, I work on my liver. And occasionally, if I feel led, I'll use some Progessence Plus. One of the only symptoms that I tend to still deal with is some dryness. And so we just use Sensation massage oil for that. So there's a lot of substitutes that we can use from Young Living. If you're looking at lubricants, definitely look at the lubricants that you might be getting from a brick and mortar store. Those are petrochemicals, again, xenoestrogens. So look at all the labels. Walk yourself back out of those so that you can support the body the way it was meant to be supported. So I know that we want to have time to answer some questions, and I'm going to turn this back over to Allie, because I know she's got some information to share with us on muscle testing.
Hi, so I want to quickly share a story with you before I start talking about muscle testing. Is that I don't really talk about it that much, but my grandmother, my mother had horrific ovarian cysts, so much, and uterine cysts. So they had to have, they were told they had to have full hysterectomies, which they both did. I started having ovarian cysts in high school. So I was following the same pattern, right, of my family. And after I had my children is when I really got into natural living, and I took all the toxins out of our home. I started eating clean diet, pulling out inflammatory foods, and using Nation Red, Progessence Plus, Endoflex, and I really was using Endoflex more for my thyroid. But remember, thyroid and hormones are all the same body system, right? It's all related. It's all one body. And I'll just tell you, I have not had a cyst. I'm now 45, which is older than my grandmother and my mother were when they had to have, or when they were told they had to have their hysterectomies. So I call that a huge, huge win for me, is that I don't have any of the issues that they had. So we are breaking generational curses here. Yay. So I want to talk just briefly about muscle testing, and then we can open to questions. This is something that sounds very woo-woo if you're new to it, but it's been around for a long time. And I do it in one way, and other people do it a different way. And Cindy was telling me she does it one way before this call, which I had never done it this way before. But you can look up how to do it. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to hold the thing that you want to test somewhere on your body, ideally not coated in plastic. So if you're testing a supplement, for instance, you may be better putting it in your hand, or I just learned from Dr. Cindy Hagerton here, you can put a supplement under your tongue and hold it there, and then see what your body does. So I'm going to stand up for a second. I'm really short, so you'll probably still be able to see me. But what I do is I stand with my legs apart and I hold whatever oil it is. So this is joy. And I'm going to ask myself mentally, does my body want this joy? and you see my body moves forward. So my body likes this joy. So you can ask yourself in different ways. But that is just a super, super quick demo of how to muscle test yourself. I do it in the kitchen with food all the time. Like, is my body wanting this food? Because I'm trying to see if I'm getting sensitive to something. Am I overeating it? Is something bothering me? So just another way to do that. So you can also put an oil sublingually, which is what Cindy was telling me earlier. I normally just hold that oil. That's how I do it. And then you can ask yourself how much of it you need. Do I need more of this? Do I need 1 drop? Do I need 2? Do I need 3? Do I need 1 capsule, 2, 3, 4, 5? And you can see how that goes for you. So our goal in these conversations, in these Zooms, in these classes, in this lifestyle is to empower you to take your own health into your hands. And that is why I love muscle testing so much. This is why I love Cindy talked about, using your taking your baseline temperature and using these apps to track for your hormones so that you don't have to get a blood test. You don't have to have a saliva test if you don't want to, and you can take control of your own health and feel very empowered. So with that, I will open it up to questions.